Completely forgot to take a sip. Welcome back. I am Serena. If you haven't been around for a while, because I've not been around for a while, but it's wonderful to have you here. Let's talk. If you are new, then you will perhaps not be aware that I have a podcast called Systems and Questions, and you can check that out. Links are in the description. Just recorded a new episode today. It's called We Have Short Memories. So look out for that. Should be published very soon. So I've had this channel for just over a year, and as I balance 9 to 5 as well as other work and creative endeavors, I produce content for here, but we speak about the media, we talk about politics, and hopefully get into the comment section, have some critical thinking exchanges. So it's wonderful to have you here whilst I set everything up. Let me just ask you to subscribe if you haven't already, and please do all those wonderful things, like and comment. Okay, we're ready. So you may or may not be aware, and the reason why I say it like that is because this case isn't getting very much attention. I thought it was therefore worthwhile for me to do some coverage of it over here on this channel, as well as my Substack. So let's first go to a piece in CNN. I'll be going to multiple sources. Don't worry, I won't be relying on just the one, since we know that's not the best media diet. And as you may or may not know, I am an affiliate of Ground News. There is a discount that you can get on a subscription. The information is in the description of this stream. So I will be using my Ground News Vantage account in order to look at various pieces of media coverage on this story. Just trying to figure out the best that'll do for now. So here on CNN, we see, my mouse is sticking. I'm so sorry. I even got myself one of these mats just to kind of get it to glide more. Let's just use my other mouse. So why has ICE detained British commentator Sami Hamdi? Before we do that, actually, let me quickly go to my Ground News summary over here. Now, this is why I think Ground News is actually quite helpful. It'll immediately give you a factual breakdown of what it is, what's going on, and then you'll get a series of articles, and it will tell you where those articles are from, by which outlets, and who owns them, what is a political bias as well. So let's just have a quick look at a summary. So British commentator Sami Hamdi detained by ICE at SFO, that's San Francisco International Airport. So Sami Hamdi, a British journalist, was detained at San Francisco International Airport by US authorities, citing concerns over his criticism of Israel, according to the Council on American Islamic Relations. Hamdi was held by the Department of Homeland Security's Immigration and Customs Enforcement while attending a speaking tour for CAR, where he discussed violence in Gaza. CAR, the Council on American Islamic Relations, described Hamdi's detention as a blatant attack on free speech, claiming it is in retaliation for his vocal criticism of the Israeli government. Pro-Israel activist Laura Loomer took credit for Hamdi's arrest, asserting he legitimizes extremist groups, while CAIR called for his immediate release. Now let's go to a few pieces over here first. Let's go to a story on the Independent Press, UK University, SOAS, School of Oriental and African Studies. UK University urges due process for alumnus Sami Hamdi, detained in the US. The School of Oriental and African Studies, SOAS, has expressed deep concern over the detention of alumnus and British journalist Sami Hamdi in the US, calling for full transparency and due process. In a statement, the SOAS said reports suggested that Hamdi travelled to the US on a valid visa to participate in a speaking tour. There is no indication that Mr. Hamdi has violated any laws, the statement said. Sami, a British Tunisian commentator and journalist, was detained on October 26th at San Francisco International Airport by US Immigration and Customs Enforcement ICE agents. He had been visiting several US states and was preparing to fly to Florida for an event hosted by the California chapter of the Council on American Islamic Relations, CAIR. The SOAS said, "We urge the US authorities to ensure full transparency and due process in Mr. Hamdi's case and to uphold his fundamental right to freedom of expression and movement." Following his arrest, the US Department of Homeland Security, DHS, and the State Department issued statements accusing Sami of backing terrorism and threatening the safety of Americans. I believe this is posted on X. It was in response to, I've got to recall this now because I've just seen clips of an interview with Sami Hamdi's wife on Novara Media. And I believe there was an exchange on X, and ICE responded. So this is the quote: "This individual's visa was revoked and he is in ICE custody pending removal. Reports are surfacing that Sami Hamdi has been unwell. He's in a room with 80 or 90 others. He's been unwell and has not received medical attention." So let's go back to this sort of post written on X. "Under President Donald Trump, those who support terrorism and undermine American national security will not be allowed to work or visit this country. It's common sense," said Tricia McLaughlin. Sorry, couldn't resist having a laugh. Assistant Secretary at the US Department of Homeland Security wrote on their X account, I believe, or wrote on X. However, for his wife, Sami Hamdi, Sami's case reflects a broader effort to silence pro-Palestinian activists, as human rights groups have criticized these measures as violations of constitutional protections for freedom of speech, which apply to everyone within the US. And this is a quote from Sami Hamdi's wife, Samaya. "Our demand from the British government is very clear. They need to bring Sami home immediately." And so Samaya said that in a recent interview with Anadolu, but she's also been on Novara Media. Let's, unfortunately or fortunately, let's just go to other media publications just to kind of, again, our media diet has to have many sources of information. And this is just another. So let's go to, let's go to BBC. So this was reported on the 27th of October, and there's been nothing since. It's now the 8th of November. So British journalist Sami Hamdi detained by US authorities. It says, British journalist and media commentator Sami Hamdi, an outspoken critic of Israel, has been arrested by US Immigration and Customs Enforcement ICE. Whilst on a speaking tour, we know that Hamdi was detained. We know that he's in ICE custody pending his removal from the country. Send him home. What's the delay? The State Department and DHS allege that Hamdi supports terrorism and poses a threat to national security, while a Muslim advocacy group argues, I think that's a CAIR, is being They argue that he's being politically targeted in violation of his free speech rights. The US, again, this is the post they put up on X. We've said it before, we'll say it again. The US has no obligation to host foreigners who support terrorism. I am rolling my eyes, but okay. And actively undermine the safety of Americans. The department added that it will continue revoking the visas of people engaging in such activities. In discourse, interfaith dialogue. Okay. DHS, ICE, and State Department did not answer the BBC's request for evidence of Hamdi's alleged support of terrorism. Hamdi, who frequently appears on British TV networks to comment on the Middle East, was detained at San Francisco airport on Sunday, apparently because of his criticism of Israel's genocide in Gaza. The Council on American Islamic Relations, CAIR, a Muslim civil rights and advocacy organization, said in a statement. Hamdi spoke at CAIR, let's just call it, Sacramento's annual gala on Saturday and was scheduled to speak at CAIR, Florida's gala on Sunday, before he was detained. CARE wrote in a statement, "Our nation must stop abducting critics of the Israeli government at the behest of unhinged Israel first bigots. This is an Israel first policy, not an American first policy, and it must end." Your thoughts in the comments, I would welcome them. Thank you for watching. If you haven't already subscribed, please do so. I upload every week on my Systems and Questions podcast, and I stream at least once a week. I'm one of those creators who has a real life, a 9 to 5, other duties and obligations. I'm reflecting a lot on the matters taking place in our world as I continue to work, consult, provide strategic thinking, contributions, and then I decide to come over here and speak to you about all of those reflections. I think it's really important that we include more content from creators such as myself in our sort of YouTube diets, in our media diets. Why is that? Because I believe, and I will be speaking about this on Serena's Playbook, my separate channel, which is for content creators primarily. If you're having to serve Algoland, that's the algorithm, like a dutiful follower, then you're not having any time to reflect, to create, to really cultivate wisdom. And therefore, what do you have to offer? And that's why I scaled back and decided to go for quality, not quantity. So thank you so much for being here and for subscribing. So let's continue with this BBC report. Layla El Haddad, a Palestinian activist and author who was in contact with Hamdi, told the BBC he has always had lawful immigration status through a valid visa and multiple past entries into the United States. She added that his only crime was speaking out. The UK's Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office, FCDO, said in a statement to the BBC that it was in contact with Hamdi's family and with local US authorities. On the issue of free speech, it said US policy is a matter for the US. It also said, "Our commitment to free speech is absolute and unchanged." The FCDO added, "It's vital for democracy around the world, including here in the UK, and we are proud to uphold freedoms whilst keeping citizens safe." The citizen safe bit. Hamdi's arrest. Well, the reason why I'm doing that is because whilst keeping citizens safe, so if citizen safety is number one, therefore it would suggest that if they are holding him because they believe their citizens aren't safe, then they're doing what we would do, and therefore we will not act. It's open to interpretation. Hamdi's arrest came after far-right political activist and Trump ally Laura Loomer wrote a series of posts on X accusing Hamdi of supporting terrorist organizations. In return, CAR argued Loomer was promoting anti-Muslim conspiracy theories. This isn't the first time the Trump administration has revoked the visas of people who have openly criticized Israel's war in Gaza. In March, Columbia University graduate and pro-Palestinian activist Mahmoud Khalil was arrested and threatened with deportation in a case that is still ongoing. His case was the most prominent in a series of arrests of student activists. Your thoughts? I welcome them. CNN, I think we all we already looked at. Well, I'm not sure if I did. Let's have a quick look. So this was on the 28th of October. They break it down. They talk about Hamdi. Who is Hamdi? He's a journalist and commentator who appears on British TV networks to analyze developments in the Middle East. He's spoken about US brokered ceasefire in Gaza and international plans for the post-war governance of the enclave. Based in London, Hamdi also writes about UK foreign policy and domestic politics. According to social media, Hamdi regularly goes on speaking tours and has recently traveled to Malaysia, Turkey, and South Africa, as well as the US. According to Hamdi's LinkedIn page, he is a managing director and editor in chief of International Interest, an organization which advises on political environments across the globe. We know about his detention. When asked if Hamdi has had consular assistance or legal representation, a spokesperson for the UK's Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office said it was in contact with the family and in touch with the local authorities. Israel's war in Gaza launched after Hamas's terror attack, etc., etc. The doing some background. Why now? Laura Loomer, conservative activist. Let's talk a little bit about Laura Loomer. A conservative activist with a direct line to Trump said Hamdi's arrest came after her relentless pressure on the State Department and Department of Homeland Security in a series of posts on X. She claimed Hamdi was an individual with Islamic terror ties. The State Department confirmed it had arrested Hamdi. Loomer called on the Trump administration to take further action against CAIR by revoking its 501c status, which makes a non-profit organization exempt from federal taxes. CAIR said Loomer, who has taken credit for a slew of high-profile firings in the Trump administration, was an anti-Muslim extremist. Loomer has previously described Islam as a cancer on humanity and said Muslims should not be allowed to seek political office in the US. What are the legal issues? This is from CNN, remember. Hamdi's attention comes as the Trump administration has taken similar actions against pro-Palestinian activists and revoked the visas for people who have criticized Israel's war in Gaza. In October, Mario Guevara, a Salvadoran journalist who documented immigration raids, was deported to El Salvador after spending months in federal custody. He was arrested in June while covering an Atlanta area No Kings protest against what organizers described as Trump's authoritarian agenda. Legal experts and judges have voiced concern over the legal basis for such detentions. In September, William Young, federal judge appointed in 1985 by President Ronald Reagan, issued an extraordinary 161-page rebuke of the Trump administration, saying its efforts to deport non-citizen activists represented a full-throated assault on the First Amendment. Young's ruling is expected to be repealed. Let's stop screen sharing. So, thoughts from you. Are you concerned? Which bit are you concerned about? And if not, why not? I think we hear this from all sides. You know, if you're not concerned, you should be, because your side will be next. You know, we hear that a lot. Regardless of where you sit on any of these geopolitical issues or humanitarian issues, are you comfortable with this kind of thing just being commonplace now? It's happening with very little international attention. For instance, you know, just from doing an initial search, a primary search of, you know, articles on Sami Hamdi, there wasn't much. There really wasn't much to you know, to go on. Not much reported, very little coverage. So questions should be, this is now sort of normalized, like the shock is very, very little. And what will that mean? Like, why should that be a concern for anyone who is doing journalistic work or advocacy, activist work, interfaith dialogue work, to connect communities, to get a deeper understanding of geopolitics, the issues involved, the interconnections, the interdependencies, all of these things? People who are actively working in that space and who also have their own views are now being targeted and labeled as such. Therefore, we should be concerned. Are you not? If not, of course, I'd love to hear from you in the comments. And if so, if you also share this sort of same concerns, then would love to hear from you in the comments. And if you haven't already subscribed, then please do. Look out for the episode that's coming out today on my Systems and Questions podcast, and it's called We Have Short Memories. It's a lovely 10 to 11 minute episode. You can find it over here on YouTube, but also on all podcast platforms. Check that out. Love to hear from you, and I'll be back very soon. Keep questioning.